Along with the burden of watching Alzheimer's disease slowly rob you of someone you love, you may also face the burden of providing the day-to-day, hour-to-hour care for your spouse, your parent, or loved one. Caregiving is really a double burden. First, there's the enormous physical burden of taking care of someone who increasingly becomes unable to take care of themselves. Then there is what often can be the even greater emotional and psychological burden. As a caregiver, at various times you may feel guilt, loneliness, even resentment.
I was probably an emotional wreck for all of the 8 years that my mother lived with me. And quite frankly, I really don't know how I got through it. I don't know if I could do it again. But when you're faced with a situation, you just kind of take it day to day. I was working a full-time job. I was traveling a lot. I was doing international work for part of those years, and I would be off on a trip for 2 weeks. So I would have to make all the arrangements in the very early stages. My sister would come over a couple of times at night to do dinner. But it got to the point where, quite frankly, I thought that my sister felt as though I was placing a burden on her. And there really wasn't, I didn't feel as though there was anybody else I could ask. So I felt like it was really all on my shoulders, and I felt very much like a martyr. I did. I played that role very, very well. I became an expert at being a martyr, perhaps not being the caregiver, but being a martyr.
I think in the beginning, maybe many people like me, I felt that maybe I had done something wrong for my grandmother to have this disease. Then the feeling become, what can I do to minimize her suffering? I remember I have prayed to God that I'm willing to reduce my life to get time or day that she can have a day that's clear.
At the beginning of it, I would have described it as a very difficult chore. But before it was over, I think I really came to see it as a privilege.
68% of the people who are doing the care die of an illness before the person they're caring for. And that's from the stress, not attending to their own physical needs, not going to doctors when they need to go to doctors, and just so concentrating every day on the person that they love who has dementia. So the most important thing the person who is the caregiver can do is take care of yourself first. It's kind of like being on an airline. When you're on an airplane, they tell you if the oxygen stops and the mask comes down, put it on yourself first and then put it on the person who's your child. That's the way it is with Alzheimer's care. You've got to take care, as a caregiver, you have to take care of your own needs first.
We know this disease lasts average 7 to 10 years, documented cases of over 20 years, so this is not something that is going to go away. It's really looking and helping the caregiver begin to adjust to a way that they're living with this disease.
It helps just to be able to share with someone and to find out that some of the feelings that you have, which I mean, I've had some feelings that I wasn't proud of, and to find out that you're not alone in that is very, very helpful.
It's been a challenge for me, some days I deal with it better than others. I mean, I basically, what I tell people that ask me about the situation, I say, Maria's doing great, and she is. I'm the one that's having the problem, the adjustment problem.
One of the most difficult situations is when the husband or wife no longer recognizes their spouse. They've been married to this person for 60 years. This is the person who's the caregiver, who's there every day, but they no longer recognize that as their husband or wife, because in their mind's eye, their husband or wife is 19 or 20 or 25. So when the wife is trying to do the care for her husband, it's terrifying. It's awful it's an awful experience for the caregiver when the husband says, "No, don't touch me, my wife wouldn't like that," and pushes you away.
Caregiving for someone with Alzheimer's will involve different strategies based on each person's different behavior and needs. But one strategy applies to every caregiver. Please hear this. don't try it alone. If one of your family members is the primary caregiver, don't let them try it alone. Even if you're managing all right at first, the time will come when you need help.
They really feel isolated sometimes. They feel like they're the only person out there doing this job, even though there are millions doing it. But they are not in touch with those people, so they really feel isolated. And I think listening to them and telling them or educating them about the process, it goes a long way.
Families can't do it 36 hours a day. Most families find that they need time out. That time out can come in the form of someone coming in, a paid person coming in, or an agency person coming into the home to stay with the person.
Some of the challenges are the things that we do normally. You know, getting up in the morning, getting our shower in the morning, eating breakfast, dressing ourselves, grooming ourselves, relating and socializing with other people. This can become challenging for the person who has dementia, and it can become very challenging and demanding for the caregiver. Some of the other simple techniques are to make the food recognizable and the presentation of the food recognizable. So instead of having a beige placemat with white bowls, you might want to have a high-colored green or red, so high contrast between the plates and the surface that they're sitting on. Often family members will say, my husband goes straight for the dessert every time. So one thing is keep the dessert off the table until the end. Never say you can't have your dessert until you eat your meal. That's not a workable solution, but just keep it out of sight until the time. If you find that your loved one only eats sweet things, you can flavor the food with artificial sweetener or put nutmeg or put cinnamon on it to create a sensation. You can add protein supplements to almost anything. Probably the most familiar is Ensure. You don't have to just give someone a glass of Ensure or a mug of Ensure. You can add Ensure as the creamer in coffee, put it in the cereal. You can add it to the mashed potatoes, so you're boosting the protein content. The second factor to look at is reducing fear. What can we do to reduce the fear factor? Some of the things about fear factor is trying to undress the person in the room that they're going to get their bath. Being moved without clothing on from one location to another is a terrifying experience. If you want someone to be able to dress themselves as much as possible, one approach is you lay the clothing on the bed in the opposite order of how they put it on.